On today's episode, Tanner is giving us 4 NFL players primed to break out in fantasy football this season. These guys are underpriced, underhyped, and set up to smash based on role, talent, and projection data. Let's get to it.
The time is now for the Dr. Bob Sports Podcast. I am Tanner. I am our head of analytics, and I am in my 9th year working alongside Bob, originating our NFL and college basketball bets. And today, as always, I'm joined by our digital media specialist, Grant. Everybody's drafting this time of year. Let's talk some fantasy.
Let's talk some fantasy. This is always one of my favorite episodes of the year. I'm an absolute junkie for fantasy football, and I know you're a junkie in those best ball streets, Tan. You finished top 100 in the best ball mania last year, but there are some great guys to target on your list today. Where do you want to start here?
Let's start with Michael Penix, who made 3 starts last year, week 16 through 18, and quietly posted big numbers. He led the NFL in air yards per attempt. He ranked 13th in EPA per play, and he averaged 15.2 fantasy points per game during that stretch.
Yeah, and he did all of that while having an 8% drop rate by his receivers, which was the highest in the league among quarterbacks with 100-plus passes.
I really think we've got the next incarnation of Jameis Winston on our hands here when just looking at downfield aggression, but Penix is more accurate. So you look at Winston, when he was a starter in Tampa Bay, his average fantasy finish was 16th in points per game, and that was capped by his last year, that legendary season where he threw for 5,000 yards, 33 touchdowns, and 30 interceptions. He finishes the QB9 that year.
Yeah, and Penix is only going as the quarterback 21 on Underdog right now.
Penix had a 9% big-time throw rate last year. Winston, in that legendary 2019 season, had just a 5% big-time throw rate. So this team, wants to get Penix throwing downfield, and I think they want to get Penix outside the pocket on bootlegs more than they were doing last year with Kirk Cousins coming back from that Achilles injury. He was not mobile at all, which kind of constrained the offense. And if they do get Penix out on bootlegs, I could see running lanes open up. Penix not known as a scrambler, but I could see him adding a little bit of a rushing floor here that's not getting factored in to the fantasy ADP right now.
Yeah, he's kind of being slept on for how good of an athlete he is. I mean, Penix ran a 4.46 40-yard dash time, and that's just never talked about in his fantasy analysis. But let's shift over to the O-line, and what is that looking like in front of Penix this season?
I think his environment's pretty good, right? I mean, he's got the 10th best offensive line by our metrics heading into the year. He's got Drake London. He's got Bijan, Kyle Pitts, whatever they can get from him. Darnell Mooney should be back by the time the season starts. And then Atlanta only has 5 outdoor games all season. So playing in a dome, certainly good for fantasy. And, with all due respect to Rome Odunze, Jalen Polk, Jalen McMillan, I think that Washington offense in 2023, the college offense, was carried by Michael Penix. Now that we know that those receivers aren't maybe as good as we thought they were going into the NFL.
Yeah, and don't forget the Huskies offensive coordinator Ryan Grubb. He was hired by the Seahawks, and then he got fired by Seattle after just 1 season. But let's shift it over to running back here. And who do you think is going to be our big breakout this season?
Jaylen Warren. So, he's been splitting time with Najee these last couple of seasons. He's averaged 11.5 touches per game in the last 2 seasons, but I believe that goes up this year because now instead of Najee, he's going to be splitting time with rookie Caleb Johnson, who is, in my opinion, worse than Najee, at least by the measurables.
Yeah, and on the team's website, it was noted he adjusted his offseason training to anticipate a larger workload in 2025. And he said, quote, "I approached this offseason differently. I did a lot more things for longevity-wise. Like they say, the best ability is availability." And then when Arthur Smith was asked if the split between Johnson and Warren would be similar to the split between Najee and Warren, Smith said it wouldn't, suggesting that Warren would play more on early downs than he did last season.
Yeah, I mean, Warren started 2024 with a hamstring injury in the preseason. Then he had a knee injury in week 3. So, he's battling stuff in the first half of the season. But for week 10 onward, he was already running back 25, splitting time with Najee. And I like I said, I think the touches go up now.
Yeah, and he also finished as the 6th most unlucky red zone converter per Rich Rebar's expected points model that we'll pull up on the screen here.
Mm-hmm. In 2023, he finished 1st in missed tackles forced per attempt and 2nd in yards after contact per attempt. And Warren has shown he can make big plays in the run game, and he's even better as a receiver. He ranked 1st in avoided tackles per route and 3rd in receptions per route.
Yeah, and to add to that, that Aaron Rodgers loves to check it down to running backs, and the Jets running backs had the 7th highest target share last season.
Yeah, and meanwhile, the Steelers running backs had the second highest target rate last year. So we know the combo of Arthur Smith and Aaron Rodgers should result in an absolutely massive amount of targets to the running backs. And I'm not sure they're going to trust Caleb Johnson in pass blocking to pick up blitzes. So I wouldn't be surprised if Warren's on the field for most, if not, let's call it 75% plus of the passing snaps. I mean, I could legitimately see Jaylen Warren leading the NFL in receptions this year, and his ADP only has him as a borderline top 30 back, but I see plenty of paths for him to finish as a top 20 guy. I would clearly take him over that tier with David Montgomery and his teammate Caleb Johnson.
Yeah, the one thing you didn't mention was that they cut Cordell Patterson, so that's freeing up 2 carries per game that he was getting last season. So it sounds like Warren is going to be an every week starter in 12-team leagues, but let's shift it over to wide receiver and who's going to be the breakout there.
Breakout here, Matthew Golden. So this one's either going to be a big hit or a big miss, right? He's probably better in redraft leagues where you can, use the waiver wire to fill if he doesn't hit, in those first few weeks. But I'm looking at it, the Packers are one of 11 offenses projected to score at least 24 points per game. So they're expected to be one of the better offenses in the NFL this year. And I think they want Golden to be their number one receiver. But he's going between wide receiver 40 and wide receiver 50, depending on the site you're drafting on.
Yeah, it's just way too late because they need Golden to be good, and they are going to give him every single chance that they can.
Yeah, I mean, they want him to be their deep threat. And last year we saw what this offense is like with and without a deep threat. Jordan Love averaged 1.8 more yards per attempt when Christian Watson was on the field, but he's going to miss most of this upcoming season because he suffered that ACL injury in week 18. Watson last year was the team's clear deep target with an 18.7 yard average depth of target. I think Golden is going to fill that role in this offense.
Yeah, and it sounds like you think we're getting a discount because of the production at Texas. It wasn't what people were accustomed to for a first-round pick. I mean, Golden was tied for 31st in yards per route run among 49 combine receivers, but had late-season breakout with a 3.52 yards per route run over the final 6 games. And then he also ran the fastest 40-yard dash time of 4.29, and then he tied the fastest 10-yard split at a 1.49 at the position.
Yeah, and I like his fit in this offense. This is from Matt Harmon over at Reception Perception. He said this offense, especially with Jordan Love under center, they want to use play action or drop back and rip big in breakers. Matthew Golden, his route running and separation is best expressed at the break point in those routes in particular. We're talking post and dig. So I think this was a perfect fit for the Packers, and they definitely want him to lead the team in targets this year.
Before we move on here, we also have to mention Jordan Love is another great QB target. He finished 16th in points per game last season while battling 2 injuries, and he also led the NFL in dropped yards. And then looking back at 2023, he finished 5th in fantasy points per game.
I mean, love that. Bang the drum, Grant. Jordan Love is a great fantasy pick this year.
You have to. But all right, we got one more player to talk about, and that is our breakout tight end. Who is it?
Jake Ferguson. So, yeah. People forget he made the Pro Bowl in 2023. That was just his second season in the NFL, but now his value is deflated because he had the most targets among all players in the league who failed to catch a touchdown pass last year, and he was dealing with injuries. So Ferguson came out, played 80% of the Cowboys' offensive snaps in the first half of week 1. Then he suffered that MCL injury in the second half, cost him the rest of the game. He was battling that for most of the first half of the season. His playing time didn't get back up into the 80% range until week 8. But then Dak Prescott suffered a season-ending injury in week 9. So last year was pretty much a lost year for Ferguson.
Yeah, to add to that, Brian Schottenheimer, Cowboys head coach, said, I think last year was a fluke for Ferguson. He definitely dealt with some stuff that was hard for him in terms of physique, and the way he's moving has been noticeably different in a good way.
Yeah, and even with the injuries in the first half of last season, Ferguson had the 9th highest first read target share rate among tight ends.
Yeah, it sounds like he could be maybe a cheap man's Trey McBride, but do you think the Dak injury is causing this Cowboys offense to be underrated?
I think that's fair to say. I mean, since 2016, when Dak was drafted, there have been 39 quarterbacks to get 2,000 dropbacks. So that's taking out all the awful guys that weren't good enough to get 2,000 dropbacks. I mean, the worst guys on that list are guys like Eli Manning and Joe Flacco. So we're looking at the 39 best quarterbacks since 2016. Dak ranks 6th in that group between Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson. So pretty good. When the Cowboys have Dak, their offense has been pretty good. I don't see any glaring issues with the supporting cast as long as Tyler Guyton's playing at left tackle there, and it looks like he will be after that July injury scare. So there has been a coaching change, but I don't think that affects Dak as much as it would other quarterbacks because he's so cerebral, and much of his success comes from diagnosing defenses at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, I definitely think Dak is a good fantasy pick as well. And then you also have CeeDee Lamb. His current ADP is in the top half of the first round. And then you have George Pickens around wide receiver 25. And then you have Jake Ferguson going as tight end 15.
Yeah, I think the wide receivers there are priced a little bit too low. I would have CD as my 1.03 behind Jamar Chase and Bijan Robinson. But Jake Ferguson is priced way too low. He's an athlete when he's healthy with a league high 1.13 avoided tackles per game over the last 2 seasons.
And to add to that, he signed that 4-year, $52 million extension in July, so that team clearly has confidence in him.
I think he can run into 8 touchdowns this season and challenge to be, in that tight end 5 to 7 range.
Definitely. Well, that is a wrap for today. We got our 4 breakout picks for fantasy football in 2025, and that is Michael Penix, Jaylen Warren, Matthew Golden, and Jake Ferguson. And if you feel like you got value today, hit that like button, drop a comment with your favorite fantasy football breakout, and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss an episode. And we'll be back next Friday with Bob joining us for that special college football win totals episode that you do not want to miss.